I think we've discovered by now that reading Kafka's writing involves layers upon layers of complexity. The first, of course, is deciphering the language. Now, Kafka's language is odd because it jumps back and forth between quite simple formulations and very complex formulations, and interspersed with what can only be called bureaucratic language. And then, of course, once we have surmounted this initial obstacle of the language itself, then our next problem is, what is he trying to say? So I've talked a lot about what is he trying to say, but now I'd like to take a step backwards and just talk about the language. And I think perhaps the best thing to do now is to simply guide you step by step grammatically through the reading of a possibly difficult formulation in Die Vorüberlaufenden. I'm going to begin by just reading this in German. Wenn man in der Nacht durch eine Gasse spazieren geht und ein Mann von weitem schon sichtbar, denn die Gasse vor uns steigt an und es ist Vollmond, uns entgegenläuft, so werden wir ihn nicht anpacken, selbst wenn er schwach und zerlumpt ist, selbst wenn jemand hinter ihm läuft und schreit, sondern wir werden ihn weiter laufen lassen. Denn es ist Nacht und wir können nicht dafür, dass die Gasse im Vollmond vor uns aufsteigt, und überdies, vielleicht haben diese zwei die Hetze zu ihrer Unterhaltung veranstaltet. Vielleicht verfolgen beide einen Dritten. Vielleicht wird der Erste unschuldig verfolgt. Vielleicht will der Zweite morden und wir würden Mitschuldige des Mordes. Vielleicht wissen die zwei nichts voneinander und es läuft nur jeder auf eigene Verantwortung in sein Bett. Vielleicht sind es Nachtwandler, vielleicht hat der Erste Waffen. Und endlich dürfen wir nicht müde sein, haben wir nicht so viel Wein getrunken? Wir sind froh, dass wir auch den Zweiten nicht mehr sehen. Now, what we have here is we have a series of clauses strung together with conjunctions. So a clause is a subject-verb-predicate construction, and a conjunction is wenn und aber dann. Now, the easiest thing when we have this kind of sentence structure is to take the various clauses apart, make sure we understand them individually, and then use the conjunctions to work out what their logical connection is. So let me just first mark the conjunctions. Okay, I've marked all the conjunctions. Some are so-called coordinating conjunctions, such as und, and as you know, a coordinating conjunction leaves the structure of the sentence as it would be without a conjunction, whereas some of them are subordinating conjunctions, which send the verb to the end of the clause. Now, in a certain sense, Kafka makes it easy for us because he begins his text with the word wenn. And whenever you have the word wenn, then you can be pretty certain it's going to be followed by a dann. If this happens, then that happens. So we search through here for a dann, and we don't find one. But what we do find is, instead of the dann, a so. So, if this happens, then that will happen. Wenn, so. So, let's look at the if-then. Wenn man in der Nacht durch eine Gasse spazieren geht. Let's put this sentence into its standard form. Man geht in der Nacht durch eine Gasse spazieren. And then comes the conjunction und. The next sentence is also a subordinated sentence, so it begins with ein Mann, the subject, and the verb is sent to the end of the sentence. The verb is entgegenlaufen. So let's take this sentence and notice we're going to leave out this little aside which is in dashes, because this subordinated clause, it inserts another clause. So let's just take this for the moment. Ein Mann von weitem schon sichtbar uns entgegenläuft. And let's put the verb in second position. Ein Mann läuft von weitem schon sichtbar uns entgegen. And this is followed by another piece of information which is contained in this clause. Die Gasse vor uns steigt an und es ist Vollmond. Let's put that as a third sentence, and let's put the verb in second position. Die Gasse steigt vor uns an und es ist Vollmond. Okay, here we have three observations which are going to be followed by a consequence introduced by the word so. And remember, this could just as well be the word dann. So let's look at those consequences. So werden wir ihn nicht anpacken. And let's get the subject in the beginning. Wir werden ihn nicht anpacken, selbst wenn er schwach und zerlumpt ist, selbst wenn jemand hinter ihm läuft und schreit. And so here are two conditions. Selbst, even if, selbst wenn, even if. And these, because this is wenn, it's again a subordinating conjunction. So let's take these two conditions. Wir werden ihn nicht anpacken. We're not going to grab him even if. Let's bold our conjunctions as we go along. Get the verb in second position. Okay, so we're not going to grab him even if he's weak and tattered, and even if somebody is running after him and screaming. And then we have another conjunction, sondern, which means something like but instead. Let's find out what we're going to do. Wir werden ihn laufen lassen. Sondern is a coordinating conjunction, and so it keeps the sentence structure. Alright, so now I think we're in a position to better understand this first paragraph. If we're walking at night through the streets and a man comes running towards us, we can see him from far, schon von weitem sichtbar, and the street is rising in front of us and it's full moon, then we won't grab him. Even if he's weak and in tatters, and even if somebody's running after him and screaming. But instead, we're going to let him run. So this is the skeleton of this short narrative sketch. What follows is introduced by the conjunction denn, usually translated as for or because. And so what's going to follow is a series of explanations why we are acting as we are acting. So let's just list these explanations. Denn is a coordinating conjunction, so it's not going to change the sentence structure. So, point number one, it's night. We can't help it. Wir können nicht dafür. What can't we help? Das. I'm going to indent that just so that we can see that this is part of that sentence. Wir können nicht dafür. We can't help it that the street, and let's get that in its right order. Die Gasse steigt im Vollmond vor uns auf. We can't help that. I'm not doing any interpreting at this stage. If I were, I would ask myself why that should be a problem. But right now we're just talking about sentence structure. So we have 2 points of explanation so far. it's nighttime, and also we can't help it that the street is rising. And now come a bunch of other points of explanation, each of them introduced by the word vielleicht, perhaps. And let's just look at what all of those perhapses are. Diese zwei haben die Hetze zu ihrer Unterhaltung veranstaltet. They've set up this chase just to amuse themselves. Beide verfolgen einen Dritten. They're both chasing after a third person. Der Erste wird unschuldig verfolgt. Der Zweite will morden und wir würden mitschuldig eines Mordes. Die zwei wissen nichts voneinander und es läuft nur jeder auf seine eigene Verantwortung in sein Bett. Es sind Nachtwandler. Der Erste hat Waffen. And then we have this third paragraph, which gives us one final point of explanation and then a final response, a final reaction. This sounds a little bit like an excuse, doesn't it? Endlich dürfen wir nicht müde sein. Are we not allowed to be tired? Did we not drink too much wine? And then this final sentence, which comes as a kind of a conclusion. Wir sind froh, dass wir auch den zweiten nicht mehr sehen. We're happy that we can't see the second one anymore. So let's just take a look at what we've got here. We've got a series of statements that are logically connected to one another. If we happen to go walking at night and we see someone running towards us in the rising street, then we will not grab him, even if he is weak and in tatters, in rags, and someone is running after him and screaming. Okay, so here is the situation, and this is why the story is a kind of a moral challenge. Why don't we do that? Well, here's what we do instead. We're gonna just let him run. Why don't we do it? Here comes the explanation. First part is a bit of a mystery. It's nighttime, and the street is rising before us in the full moon. What might that mean? Well, maybe his perceptions are unreliable. And then all these other possible interpretations. So all these interpretations in the end make moral action basically impossible. And that, I think, is the gist of this story. Well, that turned out to be a little bit more long-winded than I'd intended, but I hope to have given you some tools now for taking complex sentences apart, putting them into simpler forms, and then using logical connections to analyze the meaning, because that can be a first step towards interpretation, as I think we've seen. That's enough for today, and I will say bis zum nächsten Mal. Auf Wiedersehen.